So I think we are live, but we are going to wait until about 8:02 to kick off, right? So the presentation this morning to just allow folks to join. I see our participant numbers are jumping up as we speak. Good morning, everyone. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes before we begin our meeting this morning to allow for folks to join virtually. I don't know about you, but the first Zoom of the morning usually takes me a little longer to click on than the rest of them. I get in the groove. I'm like, where is that link? So we're going to wait till about 8:02 before we officially begin. Okay, it seems like we're holding steady, even though I said 8:02, 8:01 and a half. I think we're going to kick it off and get going this morning. Good morning. I am Mayor Jackie Millay from the City of Lone Tree, and on behalf of the Denver South Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you to our virtual partnership meeting this morning. I think we are very excited about the prospect of actually eventually coming together in person at some point in 2021, but for now, we appreciate this platform. This session this morning is being recorded. We have a very interesting program today and very much appreciate Sierra Nevada and DAT Freight and Analytics lending us their executives for our event this morning. One of the many benefits of Denver South is that it provides opportunities for elected officials to directly engage with our business community. It is really important for the local electeds like myself and my county commissioners to hear directly from companies about things that make a difference to them and things that could improve our region. Decisions we make at city council and at the county level really do impact quality of life, a company's interests in our communities. So after our speakers give their remarks this morning, we're going to turn it over to Tom Brook, who the Denver South's president and CEO, and he will facilitate a question and answer discussion period for them. So if you would like to ask a question during that period, please enter them in the chat. And I think we're all very familiar with the chat function at this point. So I am very pleased that Claude and Bob were able to join us today to give us their insight into their company and what drove their bold decisions during 2020. Claude Pumia is the president and CEO of DAT Freight and Analytics. Prior to DAT, Claude served as group executive for Roper Technologies, where he was responsible for the radio frequency and software segment. Previously, he was chief operating officer at the Bro Group, a private equity firm with a diverse portfolio of real estate, transportation, energy, and technology investments. He was also chief financial officer of Cyber Global, a publicly traded global technology and outsourcing company with over $1 billion in revenues. Claude earned his JD from the University of Virginia and completed his undergraduate degree in economics and managerial studies at Rice University. After Claude speaks, we're going to turn it over to Bob. Bob Horkey is a senior vice president of strategy for the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, aviation, and security business area of Sierra Nevada Corporation. Bob started with Sierra Nevada in 2002 as a test engineer working to develop, test, and field satellite communication capabilities on a reconnaissance aircraft that conducted electronic intelligence for the Navy's advanced anti-radiation guided missiles, Hard to say, Bob. Can't believe you actually did it. So, okay. He then served as a systems engineer on the U-28, which is a small fixed wing aircraft program of the Special Operations Command, and developed the precision strike package that would be utilized on other SOCOM gunships. I'm sure he has some secrets. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer engineering technology from the University of Dayton and also earned a master's degree in management science from the University of Dayton. Welcome to both of you. And I think Claude is going to begin this morning, and then we'll kick it over to Bob. So Claude, welcome, and thanks once again for being here.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity. And good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to get a chance to talk about DAT and why we were interested in Denver and kind of what we do. So I'll start with the next slide, please. And DAT, what are we, right? The name itself is inspired by the start of the company, where in fact, it referenced the notion that we were dial-a-truck. You dialed up to find a truck if you were a trucker. The company was founded by a gentleman named Al Jubitz in 1978, who in Portland had a chain of truck stops, or one main truck stop at the time, and decided that, like you see in airports, it would make sense to allow truckers to find opportunities to get loads when their trucks were empty on a board that was very much similar to the flight information displays at airports. Of course, since 1978, we've evolved a lot from that, and we're a very different company now, but our roots are still very much in that kind of beginning, kind of focused on what we call carriers, which is the whole trucking segment in the United States, and how we can make their lives easier by helping them find loads when they need them. If we go, and we were, DAT was acquired in 2004 by Roper, so we're part of Roper Technologies. If you go to the next slide, please. Roper is a diversified technology company, effectively a holding company, publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. It's a Fortune 1000. I think right now we're fluctuating between about a $40 and $50 billion market capitalization. And the mission of Roper is really to go out and buy great companies like DAT and hold them indefinitely, because they present an opportunity to hold a company with great cash flow, with a competitive moat around the business, and then continue to take the capital, the cash flow that's coming in from that portfolio, and find other great companies to add to the portfolio. For us at DAT, it makes it kind of a perfect partnership, because we have a parent who takes care of all the headaches of the public company aspect, has a very large balance sheet, right? But leaves us very relatively quite autonomous compared to other private equity firms to operate and kind of maximize what we can do with our business without some of the distractions that come from the public company side of the business. And Roper holds about 52 companies today, and always looking to purchase other companies. You may have read in the press maybe 4 or 5 months ago, another company that we purchased was in the Colorado area, which was Vertafore, and that was a significant addition to the portfolio. So we now have a couple of significant software companies in the Denver area that are part of the Roper portfolio. Next slide, please. So what is DAT? I'll start with kind of talking about the fact that we have 2 headquarters now. And the reason we're talking, right, is because we chose Denver as our second headquarters. And we're a company with about 500 employees. Our other primary location, where we have about 350 employees, is in Beaverton, Oregon, right, a suburb of Portland, effectively. And we're growing fast, so we'll be doing a lot of hiring. Our premise, well, I'll go to the next slide, please. Well, one more thing I would say, sorry, back to that slide, is this picture right here, which thanks for getting that added, Drew and Annabelle, but is the picture of, on the left is our Beaverton headquarters, and on the right is our new Denver Tech Center headquarters at 5050 Syracuse, which we're thrilled to have now kind of opened up the building, of course, because of COVID-19 and kind of how we're handling that. There's 2 of us who go to that office right now instead of 25. And the office has turned out great, fantastic views, and kind of all the reasons that we thought it would be a fantastic mechanism for recruiting people have come true. Now, once we get through this COVID situation, we'll be growing fast and adding a lot of people in that location. Next slide, please. Our mission. So what is DAT and kind of what are we about, right? I told you the beginnings of the company. I'll start first with, we are a software company that provides a platform to our customers for a couple of things. One is to find a load or a truck. So if you're a broker or a carrier, a trucker primarily, right, you can go to our board and you can find a load or a truck very easily. It's kind of a combination of a Craigslist and a dating service, if you will, to put it simply. There's a lot of complexity behind the scenes that make all that happen. But because of kind of what we've been able to build, we're the largest network and represents the most significant opportunity for what we call access to the spot market. If you're not a freight and logistics person, some of these terms might not be as meaningful, but effectively the way, US freight moves, there's a contract portion of the market and what's called a spot portion. Contract is where if you're a manufacturer and you're going to move 5 loads, and when I say load, think of it as a full truckload, 5 loads a week, you can sign up for a variety of carriers or one carrier and commit to a contract over a period of time, say 12 months. Now, the world doesn't always work that effectively, right? And because of uncertainties or a spike in demand or whatever might happen, you need extra capacity. What do? You go to what's called the spot market, where people haven't contracted and there's a more liquid kind of quick opportunity to find a truck or a load. We are really the place where you find access to the spot market. And I'll talk a little more about the kind of how broad that reaches when we get to a few other slides. But because of that kind of origin, we took that activity and then we wedded kind of that software computer science activity, if you will, with some data science work to provide analytics and information about the freight market generally. Because our digital marketplace has become so large, we have uniquely accurate insights about what's happening in the freight marketplace. And people now buy that information, those analytics, those predictive forecasts from us too. So it's really those two things: access to the spot market, and then this kind of extraordinary reservoir of insight into what's happening in the US freight market. And when I say US freight, in our instance, we're talking about what moves by truck. So our mission, backing up into this slide now, is we take the uncertainty out of freight. There's extraordinary uncertainty in the US freight and logistics market because of all the things you might imagine: weather, changes in demand in different industries, extraordinary circumstances like COVID-19. All these things have unpredictable impacts on what happens in the US supply chains. And of course, a huge percentage of US goods move by truck. And as a result, the US freight trucking market is very important to kind of how things are happening in the economy. We, pride ourselves on being able to, because of combining this access to the spot market with insightful information, to taking the uncertainty out of freight. To the next slide, please. We call ourselves DAT at the high level, DAT Freight and Analytics. The freight and analytics part, as you're probably starting to figure out, references what I just described in terms of the spot market, in terms of information and how we get it. And we have 2 key sub-brands. If you hear us talk about this, one is DAT1. That is really all things freight match. The term freight match is the industry term for how you kind of match a load and a truck in the industry. And then DATIQ, the second sub-brand, is all about our analytics business, our information business, what I described in terms of being able to provide insights, both historical and future-looking predictions about the market and where it's headed. So this is how we speak about ourselves, DAT1 and DATIQ. Next slide, please. Now, freight matching. This term might be new to some of you who haven't dealt with the US spot market, but freight matching is a really critical way for brokers, carriers, and shippers to find freight in the spot market. What does it really mean? If we go to the next slide, I will show you. Hopefully you can see this on your screens, but what you see here is a laptop, an iPad, an iPhone, and really what you're getting a view of is an actual search into a lane. We call it a lane. If you need to move goods from, say, Denver to Chicago, that's one lane. Denver to Dallas would be another lane. And what you can do is you go into this tool, right? Whether you use your laptop or your iPhone, and you can access the spot market by doing a search, either on a lane and saying, I want trucks, I want loads, and you get a list, as you can see on the laptop here. And that list will show you the lane itself, the contact information of the entity that you would need to contact for that load, and then a variety of other kind of data points that you'd be interested in, right? The iPhone's important because as a trucker, right, you're not, I mean, they carry iPad or laptops in their trucks, but we've invested millions of dollars to make the app and the iPhone experience as seamless as using your laptop. So if you're a trucker, you have this really kind of enriched environment to get into with your app that provides you not only the searches and what you need to go find a load, but a whole variety of ancillary services. And that's how we've been able to kind of keep the network engaged and keep attracting more and more players into this network. Okay, next slide. DAT, and I'm going fast, and we, of course, in the question and answer session, I'm happy to answer questions about this. DAT analytics, you know, the whole information side of the business, the insights, the analytics, from a kind of high level, it's all about just providing these accurate insights with what truly is the deepest and broadest kind of data set out there because of the magnitude of players on our network. And as a result of that, we've been fortunate enough to kind of develop predictive insight tools that are the most accurate in the marketplace and really give you a perspective on where freight prices are headed and how you can do planning around your business because of it. Next slide, please. What I'm showing you here is just a snapshot of one product. This is actually on this iPad, is a kind of snapshot of a screen that shows you we call it our RateCast product. Effectively, this is predictive pricing for kind of, if you took again that concept of a lane, you can see maybe in the corner Chicago market to Dallas market. So Chicago to Dallas, what are our algorithms predicting will happen to the price of moving a truckload from Chicago to Dallas? And you can see it there in the screen. It's a 70% forecast interval. And we launched this last year into kind of what, you know, unbeknownst to us was going to become one of the most unprecedented markets we've seen, right, because of COVID-19. And fortunately, it performed even better than we thought. 95% kind of forecast accuracy really kind of hit the mark. So was a appropriate product at the right time. And a lot of our customers have really embraced this as a way to kind of have some insights they didn't have before. Next slide, please. This is just a way of describing all that data that I talked about in this big kind of treasure trove of insight comes from the fact that if you thought about it in terms of like the volume of loads that are on our database, right? It's about $110 billion of global shipment annual market transaction data. So it's the largest database of this sort out there in the North America market. It's probably the largest database in the world, I would imagine, just given the volume of economic activity. And we do also have some presence in Europe and India. I didn't mention that, but in Europe, we provide some rate information and some analytics that are based upon kind of what shippers need and what they're moving. But our core business is all kind of grounded here in North America. And again, this database at 110 million is the largest you can find out there in terms of the significant number of contributions that have been occurring for over 10 years into this database that give us this ability to do both historical and predictive kind of insights. Next slide, please. And give you a sense of the network itself. When I talked about that it's large, right? There were 174 million loads posted on DAT in 2020. And it worked out to about 1.5 million searches per business day. And if you did that on an annualized basis, it's about 370 million annual searches. Why is that significant? Again, you know, network economics, without kind of boring you with all the details of that, the power of a network is about kind of being the largest network. It's one of these kind of places in the economy, right, where when you have the largest network, it tends to be more of a winner-based all type of proposition. It's not very useful to go use the, you know, the smaller network that doesn't have as broad and deep a reach. And we take it very seriously that we need to maintain this position and keep this kind of volume going. Underneath this, what you'd see is we have about 70%. Really, if you went and did a poll across the brokerage industry, you'd be hard pressed to find a broker that doesn't access the DAT network in some way. And then from a trucker perspective, this probably represents 1.3 to 1.5 million individual truckers who access this network and use it to find loads on the spot market. And you know, again, this gets into when we'll talk about recruiting, because what great software engineers and data scientists want to work on are complex problems. And because of the scale of this network and the things that we're doing behind the scenes, it represents a great opportunity to do some very interesting things if you're into kind of solving computer science problems and data science problems, which we kind of promote significantly when we're trying to recruit some of these, highly sought after people. Next slide, please. Why Denver? Okay. Well, let's go to the next slide, please. When we were looking at where we would locate our co-headquarters, I mean, the easy answer that everybody's probably thinking, if you've already gleaned that I'm a Denver resident, is that, well, I live here and this was the natural answer. And that would be the cynical answer. But the truth of the matter is it wasn't that easy. Roper is a very systematic company and insists that we do kind of a thorough and kind of, national screen of what would be the best place to locate the office. And I can tell you without kind of any hands being put on the scale, Denver came up as definitely one of the absolute leading places to put our business. And we screened 50 US cities. We were kind of very serious about looking at, what were the key dimensions that we needed: talent availability, office space, the attractiveness of the geographic location in terms of attracting more talent and salary indices, all that good stuff. Denver became the lead candidate. I really, to be objective about it, I made sure that kind of my team and some of the folks from Roper did that without kind of my intervention first. And I was really pleased to see how it did pop up. So next slide, please. For us, I mean, it's the things you've probably heard over and over again, but the talent pool, if you look at what's happened in the metropolitan area here in particular over the last 10 to 15 years, right? We've seen an extraordinary kind of influx of talented people into the region. We already have a great number of talented people that were residing here. And for us, it just becomes a natural kind of place to hire a lot of great people that have the skill sets that we need, which the skill sets I referenced, and the primary kind of most valuable skill sets we're interested in, really kind of adept software engineers, data science capabilities. That type of background is kind of the core of kind of where we create value in our company. And that's what we're looking for. Because Denver is one of the most educated cities in the US. It's attractive, right, to locate your business here. For us, it was pretty clear too when you watched what other technology companies were doing and how successful they were being at recruiting. I mean, one argument would be it makes it harder to go compete for talent, but really it creates that kind of virtual cycle, right, where you have people who just want to move to the place because of all the attractive features of living in the Denver area in terms of outdoor activities, the mountains, et cetera, combined with the fact that just more and more great jobs are coming here. And I think that cycle will continue as long as we kind of maintain some of the key quality of life aspects. Next slide, please. There's some other points in there I could mention. I mean, the airport is a huge one, though. I should say that, right? The ability to, as a Denver hub, to go anywhere direct, really easy flights between Denver and Portland, our other kind of key location, and all those things kind of led to Denver as the natural choice. For us, again, we plan to hire a lot of people over the next couple of years. It's in the range of about 200 full-time employees. And today we have about 25. So that should be some pretty significant job creation for the region. And we're proud to kind of think about the fact that we can offer, I think, a really compelling story for people to come join DAT. As we talked about, we're leading in freight data and analytics. We're growing significantly, and it's really a place where you can come and solve complex problems in a fast-paced industry. Freight and logistics historically has been thought about as kind of the backwater, right, of technology. But in the last 5 years, you've seen this massive influx of venture capital and startups because the industry was kind of one of the last big places that hasn't been as digitized as other parts of the US economy, and presents kind of big opportunities for growth and application of interesting kind of technology problems. All right, next, and the other thing we sell about DAT is we consider ourselves sort of a startup-like culture with, the security of being an existing business that makes, positive cash flow and isn't going to just run out of the ability to keep operating because we don't do the next fundraise. Next slide, please. So accessing the candidate marketplace, we've taken a pretty, we think at least, and we're open to other ideas if anyone has any, but a pretty proactive approach about getting plugged into all the areas we think we can identify talent and make, raise the awareness of DAT as a great place to come work. And Drew Bradbury's on the phone and Annabelle Reeves from my team, and they've done great work to kind of help raise that recognition. And we've, so far we've been really pleased with what we've seen in terms of the ability to attract talent in the metropolitan area. So appreciate coming into a forum like this too. This is really helpful to kind of just educate people about what we are and why we are interested in Denver. Next slide, please. Oh, questions. There we go.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Claude. I think we're going to hold off on questions until the Q&A with Tom in a bit, but I certainly learned a lot. And I think supply chains and logistics and freight movement became even more important for all of us during COVID. So I think we've all paid a little more attention to that. And we are thrilled that DAT confirmed, which obviously you knew, being a Denver area resident, that Denver South is the place to be. So looking forward to the questions. We're going to turn it over right now, though, to Bob Horkey, Senior Vice President, again, with Sierra Nevada Corporation. And he's going to share some insights into what is happening with that organization. Bob, I'll turn it to you, and then Tom will take up at the end. So thanks, everybody, for being here.
All right. Thanks, Jackie. Let's go ahead to the next slide. So who is SNC? Unfortunately, we are not the beer company, which most people think we are, but we are a privately held aerospace and defense company. In the news, we're mainly known for our space work, our Dream Chaser airplane, which is actually designed out of both Louisville, Colorado, as well as Centennial. That seems to hit the news the most in regards to what SNC does. But the vast majority of our work is actually DoD. So we are an engineering firm, employ hundreds of engineers in the Denver South region, as well as a lot of technicians that actually take our engineering good ideas and bend some metal and cut some wire to make it happen. We do about $2 billion of business a year, headquarters in Reno, Nevada. But I'd say the center of excellence is definitely in the Denver area. Let's go to the next slide. So what we do in the Centennial, Colorado area, my division is IAS, acronyms within acronyms, unfortunately, but ISR, Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance, that's how we started years ago. But as we continued to grow, we got into more aviation and security, so we thought a rebrand was required. We are a leader in aviation. Our biggest customer is USSOCOM. Like Jackie mentioned, we do quite a few variants of airplanes for them, both in Centennial and Colorado Springs. I would tell you that our small to medium-sized airplanes are modified in the Denver South area, but some of our larger airplanes, such as the gunship there, the C-130, are modified in Colorado Springs just because of some of the limitations at Kappa. We do full kind of soup to nuts capability, like I said, engineering, test, production, and then for the vast majority of our airplanes, we maintain them overseas as well as different places around the US for our customers. Let's go to the next slide, please. So our Centennial operations, we've been in the area for a long time. We've got, I believe, 10 hangars at Kappa at Centennial, and then 4 hangars down in Colorado Springs. Those are our newest hangars just because we're getting into that larger airplane market. We have about 320,000 square feet of production space, 300 technicians locally to Centennial, and 700,000 square feet of warehouse. Currently, we have 2 office buildings off of Arapahoe, a warehouse in the same area, and then we're also in the Meridian complex under lease. So we're definitely a big player in the area. If we go to the next slide, and I believe the reason we got invited to this was our facility expansion. I'm sure everybody realizes, especially with COVID, some of the impacts of not sitting together, but us being spread out over 4 or 5 different facilities has challenges. You try to organize your workforce to where they are co-located, but with different projects and new customers, that always doesn't work out. And just that 5-minute drive in between facilities can sometimes be difficult. In our business, in national defense, sometimes a phone call or a Zoom meeting like this isn't possible because we have to do things face-to-face for security reasons. So because of that, we've invested in a new facility in the Meridian Business Park. It's the old Western Union facility, if you're familiar. It's a 2-building campus, 400,000 square foot, over 81 acres. We'll have 1,400 employees there. I believe the first wave of the move happens the 22nd of this month. It's been a challenge getting this facility together with COVID, as you could probably imagine. But with a lot of hard work, it's about there. We're really excited about this. We think it's going to really streamline our workforce, increase our productivity. It's a lot more collaborative areas. Our current buildings, I would say, don't quite have the collaboration space that we required. You know, not just running out of conference rooms, but think general areas where folks can work hard problems with whiteboards and TVs and a good IT infrastructure. So we're very excited. Another thing that this facility brings for us is just an absolute phenomenal amount of classified space. So I think we're going to have about 35,000 square feet of closed room and closed area for us to do what we need to do on the high side classified work, which is a great upgrade for us, which will open us into new marketplaces, new customers, etc. Okay, let's go to the next. So we continue to grow. We have been the driving force for SNC for about a decade now. We have an average annual growth of 7% in orders and 10% in revenue since 2017. Even through COVID, we hired about 330 new employees in the Centennial Englewood area. Engineers, finance, program management, aircraft touch labor. It's across the board growth. So, you know, with that, we're also focused more on scalability. You know, we look to continue to invest in the area, continue to invest in new tools, new procedures that make us more cost competitive in the DoD marketplace. Okay. Next slide. I think that's it for me. So that's kind of a high level overview of what SNC does in the area, and we'll hold for questions.
Great, thank you, Bob. Bob and Claude, thank you both for being here and taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. I also am looking at our attendee list. We've got about 80 or so people on the phone call here. So thank all of you for joining us here and in this opportunity to hear from some of these key leaders in our region who have had the fortitude to expand during this time of COVID. So that's awesome. As we look into the questions here, I've got a couple here that I want to open them up. I know we've got a couple of questions in the chat room, but I do want to give everybody the opportunity. If we do have questions, you can use the chat or the other piece you can use. Chris Shepard will be monitoring, our VP of Economic Development. We'll be monitoring the Q&A section. So right next to the chat, you'll see the Q&A as well. And we'll be monitoring both of those. But if you could be entering your questions in there for Bob and Claude, that would be great. I wanted to start with a workforce question here. Bob, you mentioned that Sierra Nevada is continually hiring, and I think you said you hired 331 people last year, which is awesome. I know we've got a number of elected officials here on the call, and I'm sure we've got a lot of people who are appreciative for both of you guys adding jobs during the COVID time, especially. But what are you looking at as you move to your new thing? Do you see what kind of hiring do you see over the coming year? And are those going to be experienced hires, out of college hires, combination, and what kind of skill sets do you see going into 2021?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I pinged our recruiting department before this just to get some updated numbers. We're still hiring at a really good rate. We've got some big irons in the fires in terms of contract awards and things we're tracking. We believe this year we'll be hiring upwards of 900 folks in the South Denver area and that probably includes some in the Springs as well as our large aircraft modifications continue. In terms of what kind of workforce we're looking for, it's a ton of different types of engineers, system engineers, mechanical, software continues to be a very large growth area for us, electrical, obviously program management, finance, and then on the touch labor side over at the hangars, logistics, supply chain, product support technicians, aircraft AMPs continue to be a very large hire for us. So we're very excited about 21, and we think the growth will continue to be pretty stellar.
That's great. And I know we've got some innovative programs from an education standpoint here in Denver South. I know that the Cherry Creek Innovation Campus over Cherry Creek School District has their innovation campus down here in this area. And they actually have an aircraft maintenance program. So I've been able to tour that. So if you haven't seen that, we'd love to get you connected over there. But it's a really great program, and getting some kids trained with definitely needed skills. Thanks. Claude, with your move here and your hiring, I know you said you've got quite a few folks you'll be hiring. Same question to you. Is it out of college? Is it experienced hires, combination thereof? And what's the primary piece you look for in your new employees as far as the skill sets in here in the Denver South region?
Sure. Ours too is a combination, and I would say historically we've probably hired significantly more experienced people than straight out of school. What we are doing now, though, is kind of a little more focused on kind of shifting a little more toward finding more junior people out of school. I know we're structuring a partnership, or it's in process right now, to kind of do something with CU around kind of summer internships, and we'd be open to do that with other institutions too as we think about it. So open to kind of thoughts about that. We're just kind of getting that off the ground. But in the primary roles we're hiring, again, it's also a mix. It's obviously a much smaller footprint than Bob's, but we are hiring, software engineers is our kind of most significant target, if you will, and looking for a combination of people who have multiple years experience at what we call sort of pedigreed technology firms, and also just junior people who kind of show, the hunger and kind of desire to kind of jump into a fast-moving, fast-paced environment where they can work on complex problems. In addition, there'll be, a variety of roles that are available in marketing, finance, product management, and data science, I should say too. Data science and software wind up being kind of the key kind of targets that we spend the most energy kind of recruiting.
Great, thanks. And Claude, you mentioned in your production about the importance of the educated workforce and the presence of the universities in your decision to open the HQ2 here in Denver South. CU has obviously been a big player here in Denver South. We have their presence down here. CSU's had a presence down here. I know we work closely with DU. I know Mines has got a strong presence up in Golden. As you look at those, this is a question for both of you, but do you look to the universities to help with your retraining? Do you look to them, or is that something you're handling internally, or is that a program you'd be looking to?
I would say for us, we haven't historically done that. Again, we don't have the scale of some of the organizations that would probably look to that more diligently. We'd be open to consider things, but really, I think the way to think about kind of our needs is more kind of the targeted approach to, we'll have a certain initiative, right, and need a handful of engineers and be kind of targeting them and want to get a hold of them. Not a lot of retraining component, if that was the kind of source of your question, right, Tom? Thank you.
Okay. Claude, or Robert, anything to add on that?
Yeah, sorry, you caught me with mute on.
That's all right.
So in regards to how we interface with the local higher education institutes, I'd say this was a big push for us probably about 3 or 4 years ago. We had a bad habit of hiring too experienced of people, to be honest with you, and we wanted that fresh talent that brought a different perspective on our aerospace initiatives, as well as some of the mission integration aspects of what we do. So we really put a focus on it, like I said, 3-4 years ago. I think right now we're hiring on average about 50 new graduates a year into our division. We have great relationships with the surrounding area and Colorado-based colleges. But I'd tell you the two that we work with most is Colorado School of Mines, as well as CU Boulder. That seems to be our best return on investment. In regards to touch labor, and I saw a question on the side while Claude was speaking, we do have relationships with Redstone and a few of the other A&P schools in the area. Aircraft certified technicians are always, I'm not going to say a challenge, but there's definitely a shortage. It's actually one of the only career fields when folks come out of the military, they're experienced at it, they know how to do it, but they don't carry the FAA certifications. So they can't really work on some of the airplanes that we have, which is a shame. But getting that talent and working with some of those local A&P schools has been a real push by us.
Great, thank you. So in each of your presentations, and I see some questions piling up. So Claude, I see we'll try to, between Chris and I, we'll try to watch the questions and get them to you. So we don't need you guys to be straining your eyes, sorry. But you both mentioned innovation. And as you look at that, one of the things that we at Denver South are working on is trying to support that entrepreneurial ecosystem down here. But as you look at that, Claude, you mentioned the high rate of entrepreneurship in the Denver area as one of your reasons for the strength that drew you to DAT, to the Denver South region. What do you look for as far as the entrepreneurial piece, and how might an entrepreneurial company engage with DAT? How do you look to work with them, and how might they partner with you?
Sure. I think, well, first, like what we look for when we were kind of looking at places that would be a good location for the office, the reason it's important to us to have an entrepreneurial culture and a place where you see significant technology activity on the entrepreneurial side is it again kind of adds to the attractiveness of the place for the type of people that you want to recruit to your office, or just generally have flowing into the region, right? And software engineers who think about where they want to work and how they want to work are very attractive to that sort of thing. In terms of working kind of in business relationships, we have a whole group that focuses on partnerships and sometimes selective investments or even periodically acquisitions. So we'll be working with them if they're involved in our space and there's a natural fit, right, to kind of figure out how we can structure a partnership that's mutually beneficial to both entities, and see how that works. But we've got a variety of those that we've done with small companies across the country, really. So we would do the same here in the Denver area, and that's how we think about it.
Great, thanks. And Bob, how about you? Do you, does Sierra Nevada do any of that? Do they get involved with any of the accelerators or incubators or any other kind of more formalized startup programs?
Yeah, so we do have a mentor protege program that SNC does with smaller startups. We're currently sponsoring a company up in Evergreen called Connect Smart for their ISO certification. So we do try to bring some of the smaller industry partners along with us and teach them how to get some of these certifications that are required to do the job. In addition to that, Tom, I'd tell you that, being a DoD contractor, we have small business goals that we have to meet, both as a company and on individual contracts. So we're always looking for those small businesses to help us meet those goals and frankly exceed them. In addition to that, some programs that come out of the DoD are small business set-asides, that the only way we can help is to get behind a small business and support them in that endeavor. We've got great local partners, machine shops in the Littleton area, like I mentioned, Connect Smart. We do focus on trying to get those local partners when we can. Sometimes it's obviously not possible, but finding good local businesses is always at the top of our list.
Great, thanks, Bob. And picking up, I'm going to juggle back and forth and try to get some of these questions out of the Q&A here. I think we partly spoke to this, and I apologize if you did it and I was reading and didn't get all your response there, Bob. But Chris Cloker is on the line, and Representative Cloker is asked a question about, are you getting the support you need from the AMPs with the Jeffco Airport Maintenance Program and Northwest Community Colleges program? Are you familiar or connected with them, or are they of assistance to you?
I personally don't know. I saw that pop up as well. I'll have to get with our recruiting department. I know Aircraft maintenance programs, like I said before, getting those qualified technicians, both in Colorado Springs and at Centennial is a constant push. I'll get with recruiting and see if we're working with those two schools. I'd be surprised if we're not, and follow up.
Okay, well, and if we can, we'd be happy to, feel free to ping Chris or I with these things. We'd love to connect you with Cherry Creek Innovation, with these guys. Anything we can do to be of assistance, please let us know. We do talk to a lot of these folks. We'll be happy to help you with those. One of the other things that came up in here, and I'm jumping around, I'm going to drive Chris crazy, but I did see a question here, probably to both of you, and Claude, I'll let you start, but how will the new presidential administration affect your future business activity? I knew we couldn't go too long without getting back into politics, so let's jump in.
Sure. I mean, I would say for us, we don't see it as kind of, I think generally we see it as mainly kind of more upside, I think, because we've got an administration that probably is just more standard in its approach to governance, if you will, less unpredictability, less kind of extreme surprises that you really don't kind of relish when you're planning for kind of how to invest and build an enterprise. So I personally think, and I think most of the people in our industry think it's a positive move.
Great, Bob. Thanks, Claude. Bob, anything to add?
Yeah, so obviously, we're concerned with DoD budgets, right? That shouldn't be a surprise. But that being said, SNC is technically a large defense contractor, but we're smaller than the bigs, right? We're not a Lockheed, we're not a Northrop, we're not a Raytheon. We offer a pretty good value for what we do. A lot of the airplanes we modify, we do it with no original equipment manufacturer OEM involvement. So we can offer a alternative to some of the largers, like a Lockheed Martin, to the government. It usually a reduced cost and a much quicker speed to ramp in terms of getting that modification or that maintenance done and getting that airplane back in the fight quicker. So sometimes we have seen in the past as budgets contract, we actually grow because they're looking to get more done with their dollar. So we'll see how it plays out.
Great. Thanks. I did have one question. I don't know if it's popped in here. I see a couple more in the Q&A I'll get to. But Bob, a quick question from a personal interest on some programs we're working on here in Denver South. For you've mentioned security clearances and secure space and clearances and whatnot. How many of your employees have to work in the office? I mean, how many of them don't? What sort of percentage of your work has to be done in the office or in a secure location versus the ability to, work from home during COVID? I'm sure you've been impacted by this.
Sure, Tom. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously we can't modify airplanes at home, right? So all of our touch labor is 100% boots on the ground. Now we have, during COVID, I'll say spread the work out, right? We've went to more shifts, 7 days a week, so we can minimize the amount of personnel on an airplane at any given time, right? Increase that social distancing to the maximum amount possible. But at the end of the day, you got to go to work to bend some metal and run a wire. In terms of engineering and program management resources, I'd say we're probably 10 or 15% of us, maybe 20 in the office. Obviously, Governor Polis's orders have drove us there, but we are considered, national defense, a critical industry. I'll tell you that anytime anybody's working a classified program, they're in the office. The unclass work we will do from home. But yeah, I'd say probably 20% of our professional workforce is in the office at any given time.
Great, thank you. And looking at our Q&A, I see a question from Mayor Stephanie Pico from Centennial. And Stephanie's asking, Claude, this is for you. Realizing that many of your employees haven't started yet, what sort of feedback have you had from transfers or new hires about Denver South from a cost of living, quality of life standpoint? What are you hearing from them, pro or con?
Yeah, hear a lot of positive feedback, especially if people are moving from places with less kind of attractive geography and weather, right? But generally, I think just a real positive feeling about the the culture of the area in terms of how people engage with one another. I think there's a theme. It kind of maybe relates a little bit to the politics. I hate to touch this third rail, but what we see a lot of the recruits talk about is they like the fact that Denver is a balanced place. It's not kind of California or Texas, and it's a place where they feel like they can engage in people without the same level of extreme polarization. So I think that's attractive to many of the types that we hire that are, coming from California or other kind of technology hubs and want to be in a place where they can still work on the same type of kind of high level software tech problems, but do it in a place with a better standard of living and just an easier way of life, if you will.
Well, that's really encouraging to hear, because one of the things that we try to do here at our organization is try to stay somewhat neutral and political. So there's an advantage to being a purple state, it sounds like.
Yes.
That's good. How about you, Bob? I know because I'm sure with some of your hires, you're also bringing folks in. Are you seeing any challenges to recruiting folks to Denver South or to the region, or is there any cost issues or anything coming up with your folks?
There's a group of people that love Denver and love Colorado, and they're moving here, hell or high water, right? The area is great. The location's stellar. Overall, it's definitely a pull, right? Not a push, but one thing we do obviously struggle with, which probably isn't a surprise, is cost of living, right? It's not the cheapest place to live. We do have folks that can go other places for a much more reasonable cost of a house, and we do fight that time to time. But overall, I'd say the area is a huge draw.
Great, thanks. And I see a question from Jody Holloway in the chat here. Yes, Jane, I think this is for you, Bob. Just not Jody. I'll ask Claude the same question. But are your engineers that you're hiring, are they experienced or entry level? And then if it's experienced, do you require, is it required to be an aviation background, or do you have not retraining but repurposing, I guess would be the question for there.
Sure. We really pride ourselves on getting that mix. Like I said, 3-4 years ago, that was a big push by us. So what I said, 50 college grads a year on average, I think these days.
Yeah.
So we're looking for a solid mix of both experienced and entry level. In addition to that, about the aviation experience, I would say obviously it's preferred, but we hire a lot of engineers without aviation experience, both inexperienced and experienced folks.
Great. And Claude, anything to add from your end? I know yours are more software, but anything to add on your end?
Yeah, I think we also, our mix is more toward some experience with a desire now to kind of shift the mix a little more to not in terms of the overall mix, but add more than we have in the past of inexperienced people straight out of school, if you will. We've kind of invested in making sure that we can do that effectively. There's always the issue of getting people up to speed and kind of bringing them to a place where they can make a contribution to a team that's kind of doing development. But we're interested in that. I think historically, it'd probably be 90% has been some experience, right? From 3 to 4 years and up.
Great, thank you. And I do see another question here from Frederick de Zoiga. Was having this is I think to you, Claude, but was having an actual Denver address important to you, and did you get any state incentives? And then why specifically did you choose the Denver South area of town compared to downtown or elsewhere?
Right. Well, first on incentives, we made a conscious call. We looked at sort of the process and decided we weren't going to kind of engage in that process. And Denver, having a Denver address, I don't think, we were not looking at kind of where's the dividing line, whether we can see Denver or not Denver. To be real transparent about it, it was really just about the building, right? We liked that particular building in terms of where it was. If there had been one across the street that wasn't in Denver, that wouldn't have been an issue either. I think for us, the important thing was just why Denver Tech Center. For us, we felt like the Tech Center was a great location that could draw from enough of the key areas we wanted to draw from, and that downtown was costlier, probably more attractive to some of the younger candidates because it's kind of had a, evolution that way. But because of the mix that we have, it would be just as attractive to be in the Tech Center and kind of avoid some of the issues and expense of being downtown was really the kind of analysis. And I mean, I happen to live in this area too, right? So driving downtown versus being in the tech center was a lot more attractive.
Ease of commute and ease of getting to work
Yes.
is definitely a factor here. We do have another question in the area here. This is from Commissioner Kerry Warren Gully. And this probably is to both of you. So I'll start with Bob. But are you able to find your talent already here in the South Metro area, or do you need to bring them in from other places?
I would say it's a mix, both local and, nationwide.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say we do both. And we've been really pleased with the talent we've been finding in the metro area. And I mean, we've hired people that, live close by in the area, people who live downtown, some even who live in, the Boulder area. So I think we're able to draw from kind of all those places, and it's a really robust talent pool in terms of what we're looking for.
Great. All right, Claude, so I've got one for you. This is going to be a good one. This isn't exciting. But can you speak to the future? I know we in Denver South, we're looking at, we've been evaluating and looking at some projects around autonomous vehicles, but can you speak to the future of autonomous trucks?
Yeah, it's a topic that comes up a lot. There's been a lot of fascinating kind of work being done in that space. I think the way we see it from a kind of business perspective is it won't have a really foundational impact on our industry for at least probably 5 years. That won't mean you won't see a lot of headlines and a lot of progress in terms of how things are being done. But to get them out there at scale and make that work, it's a pretty complex problem. The way it probably evolves is you first see autonomous trucks on kind of what you'd call the just straight routes on the highways, right? Not kind of, and then there's some distribution type center where things move from there. But in most of the research we've done, and we've done work with McKinsey and other firms to kind of look forward and think about when does this really impact the industry in a way that we need to be concerned about from a business model perspective, et cetera. And it's at least 5 years out. Some would say 10. Like some of the press you've seen around kind of autonomous cars, Elon Musk would disagree, but the consensus would be at least, right, that it's taking longer than people thought, and kind of getting it refined to the point where everybody would be comfortable with it. It is a more difficult challenge.
Thanks. And Claude, one other item you mentioned in your presentation that I want to make sure I touch on is you had mentioned the importance of focus on and investment in public transit. Can you speak briefly to the light rail aspect and how that weighs into your decision and your recruiting efforts?
Sure. And for me, I think for a lot of the people we talk about that we're recruiting to the area too, I think one of the things when we talk about quality of life, right, it is to make sure we just maintain the infrastructure investments we need to. And I didn't mean to kind of suggest that was just light rail. I mean, it's just as important, highways, light rail, the whole kind of picture of how we make just transportation not become a paralyzing issue, right? So that, as I kind of talked about before, it doesn't become impossible to hire somebody who lives a certain distance from the office because it's just inordinately hard commute. But I think the combination of what the Denver metropolitan area has been able to do, the cooperation that's been exhibited over the years to kind of make some of these systems work, right, has been an attractive feature of why we've been able to do what we've done in the Denver metro area generally. And I think it matters to people, right? And especially kind of the younger generation of folks that we hire, right? They really do value the public transportation aspect. They value the fact that there's light rail to and from the airport, et cetera. So, I mean, these things kind of, I think in aggregate effect, just continue to add and enhance the kind of image of the region, right?
Great, thank you. So I have one last question. We're running out of time here, but I have one last question for you. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. We have quite a few elected officials on the line, and I know the Denver South region, Denver at large, and Colorado have a lot of positive attributes. But what in your searching, what did you see come up that may have caused you some things we can improve on, or things to be aware of that we should be cognizant of, that we again keep our eye on that ball and look to address that issue? Bob, you want to start? If you've got anything?
Well, on a personal note, I live in Monument, so I would just be thrilled if the gap would ever actually get completed. But outside of that, no, I mean, one of the main reasons we moved into the Meridian, right, is the light rail stop. There's a bus that operates that can connect our building to the light rail. So, I think we're fairly thrilled, obviously, or we wouldn't be making this large move.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I would say the areas that would be really critical to focus on would be to continue I think the practical, pragmatic things that matter to the business community, right? I mean, infrastructure, so transportation is clearly one, education is another, the funding of the universities in the region and how that works, I think is kind of continues to be a challenge that everyone grapples with. I would just say wherever we can kind of find the ability for all elected officials to work together and solve some of the problems that we all know are problems and kind of eliminate this partisan extreme nonsense that's been kind of the nature of the last 4 years. That would be kind of the most beneficial thing we could do as a region and attract even more kind of business people. When I kind of get together with different CEO groups and we talk about that issue, I mean, there's just a prevalent theme around kind of the majority of those kind of leaders that we'd like to see, communities come together and solve problems in more practical, pragmatic ways.
Well, great. That's a great note to end on. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Hopefully, we've gotten to most of the questions. Bob and Claude, I want to thank you both for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today and to share your thoughts and impressions. It's really helpful. And to me personally, I find it always fascinating when I hear about Claude and Bob talk about the nuances of their business, and you start to realize just how complicated these are and how many nuanced businesses there are out there. So I think it's always beneficial for us as a staff and for our elected officials and the business community at large to recognize the complexity of some of the operations you guys run. So thank you both for being here. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you all for the attendees. Thank you all for joining us. And we'll let you get on with your day. And we're going to finish at 9 o'clock on time. So again, thank you all.
All right. Thanks for the
Mayor,
opportunity.
any parting comments?
Thank you.
Any parting comments, Mayor? Oops.
No, I was going to just pop in to say thank you to Claude and Bob, but to everybody that joined us this morning on behalf of the Denver South Board of Directors. Thank you very, very much. I certainly learned a lot and very much appreciated the comments that both gentlemen made directed at what we can do as elected officials to better serve our business community and residents. So thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care.